Hi, welcome to the Red to Black podcast. Here, you will learn how to invest in highly profitable private businesses to create abundant financial freedom. If this topic interests you, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. This podcast is hosted by Werner Minchel, ex-Marine aviator and current real estate investor, and Mario Parzino, current Marine infantry officer and business investor. Mario, how are you doing this evening?
I'm excellent, Warner. How are the Bighorns?
The Bighorns, I have not been back to the Bighorns since this last weekend. I have been in Gillette for the past few days, and the weather today was around 100 to 105 degrees. And my wife and I, we knocked out a 5:30 p.m. workout in 105 degree weather for about 30 minutes, doing everything from kettlebells to burpees, and then finish off with jump ropes. So it was it
That
showed
sounds
us,
hot.
yeah, it was. It showed us that we were actually in pretty good shape. So
All right, so the
it was a
search
great day.
continues for the 5 acres of freedom on a river in the Bighorns.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know if I'm going to get
Got
into
it.
that on the podcast or not, but thanks for
Okay.
asking. How about you? How are you doing?
Hawaii is 82 degrees, but there is some tropical activity that is brewing. It's the tropical season, so we get hurricanes here in the summertime, but it's fun. You learn how to ride out a storm, Warner. You learn how to ride out a big storm.
Okay, so that sounds nice. What about the 6 topics for this evening?
Okay, let me run through them. Number one is we're going to talk about current performance and why it matters in the future. Number two, we're going to talk about customer types. There's primarily 2 or 3 of those. Number three, why do different businesses have different operating margins? Number four, the 10% operating margin business, fist fighting everyone in the pub. Number five, the 20% operating margin business, food and beverages, etc. And number six, the 30% operating margin business, a Ford F350 versus a Tesla in a head-on collision. Let's get after it, Warner.
Yeah, those are wonderful topics for this evening. I'm really looking forward to discussing those with you. So let's go over why did we create this podcast on these 3 different operating margin business models.
Yeah, it comes down to performance, Warner. We're going to focus this first topic on really unpacking why should current performance matter? What about current performance can we project out into the future and kind of get an understanding? Hey, how does this, it's in our life or in a small business or in a medium-sized business, privately owned business, or even a publicly traded business? What is that current performance doing for us right now today? In the future, can we try time travel out into the future and say, well, we don't looking in the past, past performance is no guarantee of future performance, but current performance, what is the current performance? And can we make any reasonable assessment of the future? Can you talk about performance for us?
Yeah, definitely. So performance is basically your effectiveness at fulfilling on measurable results. And a measurable result in the name is something that's measurable. And there's only one thing on the face of this earth that's measurable, and that's a number. That's the only thing we can agree on in this world. And so what's a counter is basically emotions. So you have performance and you have emotions. We can't agree on emotions, but we can agree on performance. So when taking a look at these businesses, we're going to cover a 30% operating margin, a 20% operating margin, and a 10% operating margin business. And when we're talking about operating margin, we're talking about a business that makes revenue. It takes out its cost of goods as an expense, and then it goes through SG&A, sales, general, and administrative, takes out that expense, and the number we're left with, the operating margin, that performance metric, that tells us how efficient that business is at operating. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Warner. So we can agree that in this universe, in this world, we can measure things. There's certain things we can measure, and there's intangible things like brands that are not easily measurable. The brand in the consumer's mind, these little characters, these wonderfully written logos, these symbols. I'm thinking of like Rolex or something that's really high value. There's these brands, and that's really hard to like agree on. What is that in the customer's mind? It's worth something. It's definitely worth something. It's the most important thing. But most of the time, what we can really agree on is the hard, cold numbers, the facts. These are the numbers. This is the what when the rubber meets the road. This is what the performance of this business was able to accomplish, and we can evaluate that, and we can try to look forward into the future. And so, yeah, let's talk about the future for a second. Can we time travel out of the future and say with some reasonable probability, man, if we can do this, if we can get this at this price and we can fix this and we can change this and expand this brand, we could take this and grow it into that. Can we do that in 10 years, 5 years, 7 years? Is that predictable?
Yeah, so those are great points because what you're looking at is you're taking a certain business at a certain margin that we're buying. Let's say we buy a business at a 20 to 30% margin. Well, some of the questions we're going to ask ourselves is, can we improve that margin? Was the business run efficiently? Or is it that's just the underlying margin of that business because it's a cash or it's a cash intensive business? Whatever it is, that's as investors in private businesses, that's what we're looking for. We're actually looking for, I for me, and I think you would agree with me, I'm looking for a business that's a 25% operating margin business, but it's run so poorly that they're running at a 10% operating margin. So there's a 15% delta. Now, going back to why are we talking about operating margins and why are we talking about publicly traded companies when the value of this podcast is focusing on highly profitable private companies? Well, it's as we talked about in a podcast in the past, it's hard to evaluate private businesses. So we go to the public market to look at a bigger scale of the businesses at which we are looking to see, oh, how are they operating? What's their margin? That information is all publicly available.
That's right.
And that's why we're referencing these public companies. So when we look at a business and we go, like you said, look out into the future, we want to know what is the underlying operating bar for this business and are they actually running to that bar? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's the challenge of finding a private business.
I'll just give you a quick example for the listeners. Warner and I met on a community project in a third world country overseas, and it was right when was spilling British Petroleum was spilling oil into the Gulf of Mexico at the rapid rate. And both Warner and I could see something in Warner. He was like, "Man, how's this going to turn out? Could we maybe make some money on this thing?" And we went back, or I went back. I spent a couple weeks looking at ExxonMobil in the 80s or 90s when they had the Valdez oil spill. So we were able to use an example of like, how does this turn out? Is this predictable? Is this something we can make money off of? So immediately we started doing research, or I started doing research in a little tiny can in a third world country on what happens when an oil company now, so I had a public information. Exxon had gone through this and they had recorded it in the public domain. And if you just did the nug work, if you did the work, if you actually put in the time, you could figure out how that thing turned out. I didn't invest in BP because the underlying economics were so miserable and you didn't know when the oil was going to stop shooting out of the ground. And that was the right move. I invested in a different business at that time period and did really well. So that's just kind of my thoughts about using public information to try to look at another business. It's a wise decision to make. So if you're going to buy a private business and there's something very similar to it, or even slightly similar that's public information, you go in there and do the deep dive on the financials.
So to be clear, because you're a little vague, we were in a community project. It was actually a deployment in the United States Marine Corps to Afghanistan, and Mario was stationed down at one area, and I was stationed in another area. And a can is actually like a metal box, similar to like a shipping container, but a little bit nicer. So for the listeners, that's the reference. We were in an environment, austere environment, and Mario had extra time to invest and look at opportunities. And that's where he first started introducing me to how do you evaluate a business. So it was a really interesting time, which we'll go into more depth in a later podcast. In terms of this podcast, the next thing we're going to talk about is the three customer types.
Yeah, Warner. So there is a guy or a gal that goes into a store and they are literally looking at the price of everything down to the ounces and figuring out, they're calculating, could I save if I cross the street and go to this grocery store, if I cross the street and go to this merchant, or if I go down the town, they're literally they're fabulous shoppers. These people are, they are the most efficient at every dollar they spend, they get the most value, and they're everything is based on, dollar out, how much did I get back? And there's businesses that try to appease those customers. They try to give them really good value for their dollar, but they're really tight. This is a tight business to operate. It's like, man, our customer bases are really, our customers are real tight with the dollars, but we got to give them tremendous value. There's another customer, and I'll say I'm in this bucket where I was loyal, man. I was loyal for a lot of years with Gillette razors, many years, the best a man can get. I started shaving in junior high school. I'm Italian, so started a little bit earlier. And I was loyal all the way up to when they were charging me for Gillette Mach 3s. They were charging me like 15 or 20. And I'm like, man, Harry's sells a German. I switched to like Harry's. I switched around. I found a good German. I'm not going to mention the brand. I'm not a Harry's guy. I'm just going to say I found a good German stainless steel razor blade for pennies on the dollar compared to Gillette. And then also they're going to shame me for toxic masculinity, which is pretty crazy. But I get it. A lot of females do the shopping in the household, so they still buy the Gillettes. But I was price sensitive. I was loyal. I was a loyal dude to Gillette. I love the Gillette Mach 3. I was a super loyal customer from junior high school all the way into my mid 30s, and then they tapped me out on price and then shaming me. I was a little upset with that, but I'm over it now. And then there's a third customer, and he does not care about price at all. He will buy the Rolex regardless of price or the whatever it is. It's it's a customer that's like, it doesn't matter to me. I want the best. I want the absolute best, and I'm willing to pay for it. And in fact, if it's more money next year, I don't care. I want the best thing. What is the best this? What's the best that? They're constantly looking at the best technology. They're constantly looking at what is the best one. And there's usually one or two players in that space, in that industry. So there's like one or two really there's like one or two watches that hold their value. There's like two of them. There's two watches in the world that like really hold their value, and everybody's trying to get into that space and whatnot. But man, they raise prices every year. They constantly are raising their price, and the customers love it. Those are my customers. Those are the guys I like. Those are the guys I'm interested in. I want to meet their demand. I want to, and Yeti's doing this. Yeti is like, dude, we're just going to make the absolute best stuff in the world. Like, I mean, like a chair. I don't know. They just make we're going to make a 5 gallon bucket, but it's like, this thing could really, a bomb could go off inside of it. It's not going to crack. So, and they have customers that are going to pay for it. I mean, a 5 gallon. I mean, it's ridiculous to even talk about the price of a 5 gallon bucket when they sell at Home Depot for a couple bucks. But I like the customer base. I'm not that customer. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of those. But your thoughts on that, Warner?
So what you're talking about, the three different customers, I would say they all align with the three different operating margin businesses, and it has to do with what we've discussed before, the blue ocean versus the red ocean. There's a whole book called The Blue Ocean Strategy, right? And the difference between a blue ocean and a red ocean, in a red ocean, they're competing heavily on price. Now, as you go up from a 20% to a 30% operating margin, there's more of a blue ocean. There's more of like, imagine they're on this blue ocean and they're just operating by themselves, right? So let's give an example. The 10% operating margin business in the first customer you talked about would be like gas. Gas, I'm looking for the best quality price. Now, obviously, that's going to be different if you're like a race car driver or an F1 Formula driver. That's a real small subset of the entire gas market. So everyone's competing on price in gas. When you're driving by, you're not really, unless you're focused on quality, which is a very small percentage. You're not really focused on, hey, is it excellent on mobile? You're looking for the best quality price. Now, number two, that guy who's kind of in the middle. Now we kind of get into the difference between Burger King, Wendy's, and In-N-Out. If you look at a company like Burger King and Wendy's, they have a lot of options on their menu. They have certain pricing, and then there's In-N-Out. They have less options on their menu, and they focus more on quality, on just those few cheeseburgers or burgers and the milkshakes. That's number two. So they could kind of float. Those customers could kind of float. They have a real affinity for In and Out, but maybe if they can't get In and Out, they're going down to Burger King. And then there's your final customer set, which is like your Oracles or Watch, which is the best, in my opinion, best watch company in the world. I don't know if you've heard of them, Jaeger LeCoultre. Have you heard of that watch company?
No, I haven't.
They're the best, man. They hold their
All right.
value. If you want a watch, it's a craftsman watch.
So just for all the listeners, I wear a $100 G-Shock. It's my favorite watch. It's called a Casio G-Shock. I got the Frogman. So just for all the listeners, we're just using these as business examples. I'm literally wearing a $100 watch by Casio. That's the mud resistant Mudman. It's the Mudman.
Yeah, so it depends what you're into because the Jaeger LeCoultre watch, and I'm butchering that name, it could sell for $1 million. The best one, I looked at one of them, and the difference between that watch and the gas is there's only a few of them, and the design is like this artistic, unique design. If you look at the watches, they blow a Rolex out of the water. There's no questions asked. So for individuals that really understand watches, Jaeger LeCoultre is at the top of the pile, and they are a small watch company. They hold their value, and they have insane design, craftsmanship, and that's what differentiates a really loyal customer. It's supply and demand. There's not a lot of that supply. Whereas gas, there's a ton of supply. That's how I decipher the three customers. I would say generally they filter out from what you said from number one to number three, from 10% to 20% to 30% operating margin. Now I know that's kind of a generality. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, so just for the listeners, just to recap what Warner was talking about is these different companies are trying to sell their products. They're trying to produce high quality products and sell them at the right price, but they're all targeting different customers. There's the customer that's very price sensitive, and there's people trying to meet that demand. There's the guy in the middle, that's me, who's willing to pay a good price a fair price up to a point. He wants good quality stuff, but he taps out at a certain point. And then there's that third guy. There's that really high end stuff, and those are the businesses I want to buy. Those are the businesses that I really am interested in. I'm not that customer, but those are businesses that fascinate me. I think we can move on to number three. Why do businesses have different operating margins? Uh, and different spaces. What can you unpack that for us, Warren?
Yeah, so the difference between different businesses, which is evident in their cash flow statements, is you'll see. Let's give the example of, say, Enterprise Partners, which is an oil company, right? They are I love how you refer to them. You refer to them as these rusty, rusty pipeline businesses, and that's what they are. I mean, I'm out here in Gillette, Wyoming, and I drive by pipelines all day long, and I drive by oil rigs, and I drive by coal mines and coal fired plants. So I'm seeing it firsthand. The amount of maintenance that's required to run one of those businesses, when you talk to the guys in the mines who are, there's deck guys, there's guys that are running the massive shovels, there's guys that are running the conveyor belts, there's guys that are down below, making sure that all the coal doesn't catch on fire, because as the coal is moving along, the fumes are so flammable, they have to keep the coal cool. It's an insanely intense and dangerous job. Yet coal powers most of the country and most of the third world countries. So the thing is, it's the cash intensiveness of that business. It requires so much to operate that business that cuts into your revenue, and that revenue, you're operating in a commodity business where revenues are always driving down or up to pay based on supply and demand. Now, take for example Oracle. They just spin up a database, and all they're worried about is that the database is up and it's not being hacked, and that the software is running how the software should run in terms of a CRM or database software, whatever product they're serving their customer. So the underlying expenses to run Oracle are way, way less than Enterprise Partners. And you can see in the cash flow statement, the Oracle cash flow statement is simple. They take that cash and they either pay it out as dividends to their shareholders or they reinvest it. Enterprise Partners pays a dividend, yet that dividend, 33% of their dividend 100% of their cash flow goes to pay that dividend, and then they raise two-thirds more in the debt market. That tells you that they're enticing people to come in with this fake dividend, and Oracle is just sitting on piles and piles of cash, and that all has to do with the underlying expenses and operations that drive each business.
Excellent points, Warner. So you used Oracle and compared it to the coal industry. I'd like to use the sheet steel business to Oracle. So you have a Toyota Tundra. Do you know what sheet steel is used in the doors?
I think the newer Tundras, I think they're all aluminum, right?
Okay, aluminum, perfect. Do you know who milled that, or do you know who made the aluminum panels and the doors? Do you know who produced the aluminum?
I don't. I would guess it was American made, and then it was shipped down to Texas where those vehicles are produced.
Yeah, but you don't really care. The point is this: is that
Exactly. Yeah.
nobody really care. I want the Tundra. I don't really care where you bought the aluminum from. Did you buy it from Canada? Did you buy it from Pittsburgh? Did you buy it from Erie, Pennsylvania? Did you buy it from Gary, Indiana? I don't really. It doesn't really bother me where you bought this aluminum from. You made a beautiful truck. You made what I consider the world's best truck. It's a Toyota pickup truck, and evidenced by every third world nation that has an uprising. The technical vehicles they use are Toyota Hiluxes. So they got some equity, or there's some customer. There's some like the best kind of customers are the ones that are advertising your product for free. And these trucks, they just run, man. I think those Toyotas just run. So the problem is Toyota doesn't go and say, well, oh, you have a good brand. You produce really great aluminum, and you do well, and and we like this brand. They don't care. They just go and they just hammer those companies. They go up there and they just hammer them on price because they've got the brand, and they've got the beautiful look under a Toyota. Crawl under a Toyota truck and look how beautiful it's put together. Like, look how well put together that truck is. You know, go go find a go find a you know a Russian car made in the 80s, or a a East German car. The German cars are wonderful. I'm not saying that, but I mean there's cars in the world that you're just like, man, I can't believe they can actually sell these things. And we see those. If you travel the world, you see these cars. You're just like, it's embarrassing that they actually were able to sell these things. But my point is this: when we store our data, we care about it. Warner and I definitely care about where we store our data, and we care about brand, and we're willing to pay for the best at the end of the day. And there's high switching costs, man. If we wanted to move everything around because they raised their prices on us, it'd be such a nightmare. Yeah, could we do it? Yes, we could call up Amazon and move our data. We call up Microsoft. We call up a what is it out in Europe? SAP. We call up SAP and move all our data to save. But it's just like Oracle for logistics, Oracle software for anything you're doing with logistics is just the best. It just works. It's just reliable. It's the way to run a logistics company. So we have a lot of faith in Oracle. We love the company. We're not interested in buying Oracle. Obviously, it's a little too big for our britches, but we use that as an example, as a hurdle that we have to look at whenever we're looking at other private businesses. Thoughts on that, Warner?
So yeah, so there's corollaries I'm seeing in terms of different businesses with different operating margins. With a commodity business, which is a low operating margin business, there's not, as you discussed, in terms of aluminum or steel or whatever metal you're sourcing, or copper. As a construction manager, I sourced copper, I sourced plastics. You don't care. You're just looking for a certain level of quality at a certain price, and that price you'll go to different guys to see where their prices are. And so the corollary is that on the commodity side, it's just price. It's just price. You're working on getting the best price. But as you go up this operating margin business and you get into more of a blue ocean where you don't have as much competition, the brand starts growing. It starts looking a little bit nicer. There's something about a 30% operating margin business that cultivates a certain type of brand because it's unique. Like Oracle, it's in a different space, or Jaeger LeCoultre, it's in a different space than a Rolex for people that know watches. Like that's like the artistic high quality timepiece. The Rolex is more of the middle higher end timepieces for people that want that bling, right? Jaeger LeCoultre is like that finesse, that style, that it's just you're an accomplished gentleman when you have a Jaeger LeCoultre. A Rolex is like you're showing off your wealth. Now, those both those businesses at their different levels, they both have phenomenal brands, and brands are aligned with the operating margin businesses. Any thoughts on that?
I'd like to contrast Oracle with Amazon. I think that'll lead us into discussion number four, the 10% operating margin business, fist fighting everyone in the pub. So Amazon is one of those companies that's like, we're gonna win on price and we're gonna compete against everybody, everywhere, and everything. Oracle is like, we're gonna be a one trick pony. They're a one trick pony. Oracle is a one trick pony, and they got it. They got it down. They got the brand. That Oracle, you see Larry Ellison sailing his sailboat around, racing his sailboat around San Francisco Bay, and you look up on that sail, and it's got those letters, and even the font. Like Warner and I tried to copy the font of those. It's very difficult to find somebody to actually recreate that font. I mean, he got it, man. Those guys figured out in the consumer's mind, there's a consumer that wants to store their data, that's willing to pay for that brand. You could save money going to Amazon Web Services, and Jeff Bezos is banging. He's banging dudes out in the bar. He is knocking dudes out in the bar. He is knocking. He's going after easy fights. He took out the easy guys first, and he's picking dudes off. But it's like, man, that guy's. I mean, that guy must. It's just. And he stepped down as a CEO. He ran that thing. He ran that thing hard. He's now the chairman. I mean, it's just a name change. But I mean, it's like he's thinking about flying. I got to win on Mars. I got to win. I got to win over here. I got to win over there. I got to win over there. I got to win. I got to win everywhere. And then we look at the results, and it's like, man, that's a low margin business. Ouch. I got to win. I got to win in groceries. I got to win in groceries. I have to beat Walmart in groceries. And you're like, oh, geez. Oh man. All right. I'm competing against Walmart. I'm competing against Costco. Geez, what you're competing on price. That's a different customer. Oracle's got that beautiful brand. So, what are your thoughts on the 10% operating margin businesses and fist fighting every last person in the pub?
Well, before we go there, we have a few more minutes. We have about 3 more minutes on this topic. I want to talk a little bit more about Oracle and Amazon and the differences. So AWS is when you look at their. I was actually in there today because I spun up some websites. This website called Eating with Ellis off of their server, so I know a lot about it. They offer a bunch of software at its root level, like databases, DNS systems, which is how you route your web traffic, and a whole host of other things from AI to different types of web servers. They have it all. So they're operating in a business where you, as a web developer or a company, can come in and use their services, and it's a commodity business at its core. There's a lot of power to it because a lot of the world uses it, and then there's competitor rack space. So at its core, it's a commodity business because people are coming in to buy, databases, whatever it is they need. Now, Oracle, they're offering you the whole package. They're offering you security. They're offering you the CRM system. It's straight out of the box. So if you're a bank, you're not having to build this up yourself and focusing on, hey, is my security guy good? Does he have the back end secured? Oracle's got it all taken care of. So what Oracle offers is a peace of mind from the security. They're known for the security of their systems. They offer amazing CRM systems. They offer this family, like you kind of talk about this brand that you can just come into and you're going to be taken care of. And one of my friends, this guy, Sean Tucker, he's been sponsored by Oracle for many years. He's one of the best airback pilots in the world. And he's got this beautiful biplane with the beautiful red, that deep red on it and the Oracle emblem. And it's just, yeah, it just screams brand. So Oracle's creating this, like you're part of the family, you're part of this brand, you'll be protected here. Amazon's like, hey, I've got a million different options. Just take whatever one you want. And that's the difference between, and I don't want to go deeper than that because people
Yeah,
get confused on the tech end, but that's the difference. One is like a huge family to become a part of, and the other one is like, here's everything you could use to build up your web system. You go figure it out. And that's the difference between two brands.
All right, so I've used Oracle. So just to let the folks know my background, I've used Oracle logistics software in the Marine Corps for 17 years, and it's just the best. Like the Marine Corps is not going to give up on Oracle because it just works. It's absolutely reliable. It's bulletproof. It's just bomb proof. And then, oh, by the way, it's like the same red logo as the Marine Corps. It's like it works with the Marine Corps. Like it's and I'm not going to speak for other parts of the DoD. I'm not even familiar with Army or Navy logistics or it's Navy Marine Corps team. So we both use Oracle, but no idea what the Army uses. No idea what the Air Force uses, but I know what the Marine Corps uses, and it's been working really well for 17 years that I've used it. So I'm a big fan of Oracle and storing data. So they're a one trick pony. They're at least a 30% operating margin business. I throw them in there. If we want to go on, do you want to go to topic 4, Warner?
Yeah. I was going to segue right into that. So the 10% operating margin business, you're talking about Amazon. Now, why are they at a 10% operating margin business? I mean, let's just take a package, for example, or drop shipping. Let's say you're a supplier of toothbrushes and you drop ship, which means you store all your toothbrushes at a Amazon fulfillment center. Can can you imagine the logistical nightmare it is to pick out the toothbrush, put it in a box, and then ship these toothbrushes all over the world? First of all, you got to get the toothbrushes, then you're organizing them, then you're shipping them on multiple different platforms. They're managing conveyor belts, managing robots, they're managing program managers, they're managing trucks. Now Bezos has got planes. Now he's got Whole Foods. Now he's managing like thousands of inventory items. A perfect example is look at the individuals that work at Amazon. How many stories have you as the listeners heard in the past few years where people are literally worked to the bone? They're literally working nonstop. How many of those same stories have you heard about Oracle? I'm not saying there's not disgruntled employees at Oracle, but what I'm saying
It's a
as a
whole lot
whole,
less, Warner. There's a whole lot
people,
less.
yeah, it's a whole, I mean, they're not worried about it because Oracle is like, I spin up a dang server. All I have to do is make sure that the servers are cooled and make sure that no one's hacking them and that the software is running the way it should run. Amazon's like, oh my god, a truck just went off the road and blew up. Now it's a whole shuffle to realign the truck to get a new truck out. Every other product that was in that truck is now done. So now that's creating a ripple effect down this chain of command. And oh, by the way, Oracle servers are just humming along, just providing data protection. They're providing CRM. Amazon's managing thousands and thousands of trucks and planes and people and systems all over the world. You can see why that's a 5% operating margin business because every single cent of that business goes to getting that simple toothbrush. You don't see everything that's behind it into your hand within a certain amount of time that they promised. What are your thoughts on that?
Is excellent. So how much? So my question for you, excellent analogy. My question for you is, how much money did the investors make? If you and I think Amazon's going to win. I actually think that they're going to win with their computers. They're going to have one of the largest computers in the world. There's going to be probably 3 computers in the world, and one of them, so 3 large computers. And this it's hard to wrap for most people. They're not going to really understand what we're talking about, but for those technical guys out there, the autistic technical guys, there's going to be 3 huge servers in the world that are all connected or semi-connected. But Amazon's going to own one of those servers. But we're talking about for the investors. If you invested in Amazon, how much did you make selling that toothbrush? So they didn't even own it. This is a great thing. They didn't have to build the toothbrush. They didn't have to do it. They just sold it. They just get it from their fulfillment center to the customer's hand in 2 days. Got it in 2 days. How much money did they make off of doing that?
They made, well, off their 10K, which is an annual report, they made 5%.
Well, I'm just saying they made like they made a fraction of a penny of selling that toothbrush. I mean, selling a toothbrush, it's just they're going to win. They got to win. They have to win that game. They got to bring a toothbrush. I think there'll be a time where you could dial up on your phone and they'll drop you a toothbrush on your boat in North Carolina. They're literally they'll take a drone out to your boat and drop you a toothbrush. Like, oh, I need a toothbrush. Boom. They'll fly you a drone out to your boat. You know, you're in the state of North Carolina. You're 3 miles offshore or near or near, you're inshore, near shore, and you dial up the app and you say I need a toothbrush tonight, and a drone will show up at the back of your little dinghy, and they will drop a toothbrush to you.
Why, for the listeners, are is Mario and myself, Warner, why are we droning on and on about stuff that could be possibly putting you to sleep? Here,
This is good bedtime. It's
yeah,
FMDJ, Warner. This is FMDJ. It's good
exactly.
bedtime. Good bedtime podcast.
Here's the reason why. It's because this whole podcast is focused on you investing, us supporting you and investing in highly profitable private businesses. You could be buying a business, you could be creating your home business, you could already have your business. At the end of the day, our goal for you is for you to make more money and have more time. And I know personally someone in my family who runs a construction business and his hair is gray and he's up at 6 in the morning and he's coming back from work at 6 to 7 at night. And the guy that still runs the business, his father in law, is still working at 70. Now, be it he loves that business. So I get it. He just loves it. And he built it. It's third generation, fourth generation business. Here's the key. He can't, my family member, he can't even get away from that business. And that's the thing with a 5% operating margin business. It chains you to the business because there are so many logistical things going on with a construction company or Amazon that the second you step away, I know I've done construction projects, the second you step away from it, it's like it just goes haywire. There's an emergency, and the next thing you know, you're pulled back into it. And all the time, Oracle is just humming along, hum, 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 hum. That's our goal for you, is to avoid these 5% operating margin business, whether you're building them, investing in them, or you're already a part of one of those businesses. Avoid those businesses like the plague because they will take all your time and they will pay you little return for your invested capital.
Yeah, you hammered it, Warner, when you said chain to that business. Management's in place and it's you. Management is in
Exactly.
place, management's on the ground, and it's always you. You'll never walk away from that business and allow it to run. Hey, I'm going to turn it over I'm going to put a new CEO in this year. We're going to let this guy run for a couple of years, see how he does. Hey, we're going to put a new CFO in. We're going to put a new, COO in. Those companies that Warner's talking about. So we're going to just say he's the Germanic Bostonian. This business is winning. They're actually winning. He is winning in the medical space. He's building out medical buildings in Boston for high-tech medical companies, and they're winning. And they go to work every day of their life. There's no thinking. I can't go. You know what? I need to walk the Appalachian Trail and think for a week. Hey, Warner, I need to take a month off and go think. I need to go think. That business falls apart if you take a month off. That business, you are there. The management is in place, and you're it. What are your thoughts on that, Warner?
So, great point. When you walk away, here's a question to ask yourself. When you walk away from any business, and you and I have discussed this in the past, will that business run without you being at the helm or being even a part of the management structure? Can you walk away from it and the thing kind of just hums along? You're not getting bothered by all these emergencies. There's rarely any emergencies. Like, for example, we have an apartment complex here in Wyoming, and it's about 330 units or so. We have a professionally managed company that runs it. And
Warner, it's 336 units. It's
36, okay.
336. It's exactly 336
Mar-
units.
Thank you, Mario. I appreciate that. So, correction, 330 add 6, 336.
6. 36. That's it, buddy.
So, my point is that when you have assets that don't require a lot of your time, and maybe there's emergency every month, that's a much easier lifestyle. You can think. So ask yourself this question as a listener of this podcast. Can you walk away from your business for a few weeks? Can you check in on your business if you walked away for a few weeks, maybe once a week? Maybe you just check in every day just to see how it's going. We have no issue with that. But if that's checking in every day becomes a 10-minute check-in to an 8-hour process, well then you're not in a 30% operating margin business. And that takes us
That's right.
to the
That's right.
next point, which is the 20% operating margin business. And let's take a look at a business, say Yum Brands, and possibly In and Out. I don't know, maybe In and Out has insane margins, but Yum Brands,
It's private. It's privately
privately
owned. In and out. We're not going to. So we think it might have better, but we can look at McDonald's. We can look
McDonald's
at
is
Taco
like
Bell, which is
38%. Right?
yeah, it's doing a little bit better. So you could In and Out, In and Out. There's a regional burger place down in Texas called Whataburger. There's guys doing the high end burgers and trying to win in that space. They might have higher margins. It's hard to tell because they're all privately owned.
But think about it for a second. We just described Amazon, which is trucks, planes, boats. I mean, spaceships, whatever the heck they have to get your package,
Toothbrush, your toothbrush to your
your
boat.
toothbrush to you. I mean, the logistical. If I just want you to imagine as a podcast listener, I want you to put yourself, I want you to turn yourself into a toothbrush and just go through the whole process of like from the factory onto a little cart into a box, shipped on some sort of truck, then to a plane, then back to a truck, then to another truck, then into a guy's hand or a robot's hand to you. I mean, that's like 8 or 9 steps, and I'm being generous. So now let's take a look at a little bit less cash intensive business, which is fast food. All it requires is certain suppliers to deliver the food to your location, and then you prep that food, and then you serve that food. Now, there's definitely obstacles you can encounter, like machines going down, trucks delivering the food going down, the quality of the food coming to your restaurant or store. It's not at your level. That's not the same as Amazon managing millions and millions of SKUs, and you're just managing a few SKUs with hamburgers, tomatoes, mustard, and then the cups, the plates, whatever else is required. It's probably maybe, I don't know. I'm talking out of thin air here. Maybe 1,000 SKUs versus millions of SKUs. You can see the difference between what it takes to operate each of those models.
Yeah, the fast food and it's an interesting business. The problem I have with the fast food industry is that you can't get your customer to come back every day. Every feed, he's not going to come back to hit your specific chain. But there's guys winning in that space, and they're going to return a lot more money back to the owners, the shareholders, or private businesses, In and Outs, Whataburger. Those businesses are actually going to return a lot more money back to their owners than Amazon's going to return to its owners because they're more like a 20% operating margin business. And there's a few that are going a little higher than 20%. But on average, over the years, if you look back 10, 15, 20, 30 years, these businesses are kind of around that 20, 25% operating margin business. So these are, there's nothing wrong if you want to invest in fast food. There's a gentleman out in North Carolina who started a very successful, he actually played in the NFL, I think, and then he got out and he started a very successful chain of fast food restaurants. And then he bought an NFL team. He was able to buy an NFL team based on not playing in the NFL, but starting
Who's that? Do you know his
a
name?
his name. His name's my brain's having a hard time keeping up tonight.
We'll get back to you guys on that one. We're not sure. Okay, keep going.
But he started a hamburger. He started a hamburger joint out on the East Coast, and it became very successful. And anyway, he's one of the very few NFL players who have ever played in the NFL and then owned an NFL team. And he did not do that by his NFL earnings. He was not able to buy an NFL team based on his earnings in the NFL. He did that by running fast food restaurants very successfully. And he started with one location, two, three, started the franchise business. He knew he understood what McDonald's was doing. And he went after a different customer base. He brought a different product and met a different need in the space. And the gentleman's name escapes me, but somebody highly autistic will figure this out in a few days and shoot me an email with all his data. So thank you to my young nephews out there. But it works. It works. I'm not into fast food. I would much prefer different businesses than that, but it works, gentlemen. That works. Any thoughts on that, Warner?
Yeah, so we're talking about a 10% operating margin business, Amazon, and a 20% operating margin business. And there's a theme here. When you look at the financials of these businesses, there's a certain amount of cash that's being kept in its coffers. There's very little cash for Amazon unless they're raising more shares and plumping up their coffers. And there's a little bit more money for the fast food chains. And then there's a lot more money for the oracles. Why is this important? Well, when you're an investor, whether you invest in your own business, you're currently involved in a business, or you're investing in another business, the main question you want to ask is, if I put my money here, am I going to get a return on my money? Well, let's look at Amazon right now. If I give my money to you, the only return I'm getting is appreciation. And we talked about that in the last podcast. Appreciation is a fool's game. Cash flow is a wealthy man's game. So always ask yourself the question: if I put my cash here, do they pay me to own it? And if you hear the response, oh yeah, someday we're going to make money, just turn around, walk the other way, and find a business that will pay you to own it.
Okay, so the question to ask, gentlemen, is when? When will you make money? Someday doesn't work for me. What's that? Where's the state? I think it's Missouri. It's the show me state. No, show me.
Exactly.
Oh, you're making money. Show me. Show me you've made money.
And that's a guess, because unless you know the individual very well, you don't know their ability to execute, which is their ability to perform. So our recommendation is always, unless you're very savvy and you've run those type of business in the past, you know exactly what you're doing, never invest in a business that doesn't pay you to own it.
That's right.
And now Mario and I, obviously, we're starting a podcast business. We're starting a private equity business. And right now it's our own sweat equity to build it up. That's one caveat. If you're using your own sweat equity and your extra time to build something up, and it doesn't cost you a lot, there's actually great returns in terms of the knowledge you're gaining, the relationships you're gaining. And if you just keep at it, someday you're going to make money, but you're not sinking already earned at cash that you have heavily into something that's not paying you to own it. You're taking that cash that you have and investing in a business that pay you to own it. And then with your other resources, like you and me, Mario, we're building up this wonderful brand. So if it's your own labor and you have extra labor, yeah, use it to build your passion project. But don't take your cash, all of it, the majority of it, invested in your passion project. Invest in something that actually pays you to own it, because those cash flows will enable you to do your passion projects for as long as you like. And as Mario said, they'll enable you to think.
That's right. If you buy the right businesses, you can step away from a period of time, 30 days, and you can walk. You can go think, or you can go sail, or you can go do something and think about how we can move this business. How we can you can go strategize. You can go up to the mountains and strategize and sit down and think about where can we go next year. How can we build this out? And you come back with more energy. If you're in that construction business from the Germanic Bostonian, you can't leave that business to go think about next year. You're in the fight every day trying to survive, and they're building absolute beautiful buildings for incredible medical players in Boston. And the technology that's coming out of Boston, they can a burn victim. Just a quick story, Warner. A burn victim can have a little tiny patch of skin flown up to Boston. They can recreate sheets of that skin and fly it back and lay that on the burn victim, and the burn victim is able to absorb that skin because it's his or her own skin. The body won't reject it because it's just grow. They can grow sheets and sheets of your skin, and they knock you out so you don't roll over and tear it off yourself. But what's coming out of Boston is incredible, and the fact that the Germanic Bostonian is in that space, it's fascinating. I think that obviously the older gentleman who owns the business, his father-in-law, loves it. You have to love that business to do that. But all the profits at the end of the year, they're all in that machinery to build those buildings. So if you want to be able to go think and strategize, you don't want to be in a 5% operating margin business.
And here's another point too. We're kind of rolling into our last topic, about 10 minutes left. Here's another point. There's a differentiation between what we're talking about on this podcast, which is invest in private businesses, and we talked about this on a few podcasts ago. When you're investing in a publicly traded company, what you see is what you get. 5%, 20%, 30% operating margin business, obviously the higher up the rung you go, up the ladder, you're going to make more money if you're picking the right business that's paying you a dividend. Now, here's the difference between a private business. You could buy a 20% operating margin business like you and I talked about for 5 million and grow their revenues to 100 million. You're going to make way more than 20%. We're talking about just straight line dividends being paid
That's
out to
right.
you based on their operating margins. But if you go in, the only difference between say a 20% and a 30% operating margin business is going to be that margin of safety. We would always like to err towards a higher margin of safety because that gives us more of a cushion if things in the economy go sideways. It just gives us the more than 10% more from a 20 to a 30%. Yet at the end of the day, if you buy it cheap enough and you can appreciate from 5 to 10 to 20, 30, 40 million, you're going to become insanely wealthy because you took a $5 million business, you took the revenues to here, you throw another multiple on that, you sell it, you're going to make way more than you ever did in a public business. I mean, eventually you'll make money in public business long term down the road. But when you do more legwork and you own that business and you run that business, you decide what you do with that extra 500x in revenue that's coming in.
Gives you
So,
options. You're building optionality into your playbook.
so on the final note, now we're rolling into the businesses that we love, which is these 30% operating margin businesses. And do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah, so I want to give a
about
public,
the alcohol
I want to
business?
give a public safety message first. So these 30% operating margin businesses are like they're like Mack trucks, or these are this is why I drive. I mean, I drive a SUV. I drive a Toyota 4Runner, but there's cars that weigh 10,000 pounds out on the highway. There's cars that weigh 30,000 pounds. I mean, to drive a Tesla out in Wyoming is like ridiculous. You don't want to go head on with an F-350 and a Tesla on two lane out in Wyoming. I got it. If you're in LA, I got it. To drive your
Like
Tesla in LA, but don't drive that out to LA. Get yourself a pickup truck.
a super ranch or whatever. I
Oh,
just saw
they're
King.
insane.
Sorry, King
They're
Ranch. Oh my God, dually. I saw dually King
thing's 30
Ranch.
feet
Oh, thing
long.
would
The thing's
flatten
30
you.
feet long, right? So a public safety message is drive a car that's going to do well in an accident and wear your seatbelt. And then in businesses, it's like that's the same thing. Is like going into these businesses that have like really high operating margins, or they have the ability to grow to very high operating margin business. It's driving that F-350 in Wyoming. Like, okay, I hit a road bump. I hit like a deer. You're like, I don't know. I hit a deer. Should we stop? No, it's all right. Oh, I hit a Tesla. You're don't hit anything. Try not to hit anything, but if you run into road bumps in life and you're driving an F-350, it's like, I don't even, did we hit something, Warner? I don't even know if we hit a deer.
I know.
But you're driving a Tesla, man. Your Tesla's totaled, dude. You hit a deer out, and you're zipping around Wyoming, and you hit a deer with a Tesla. Man, that thing's going through the windshield. I mean, it's good. You're calling the highway patrol. Like it's a bad. We're those. Um, anyway, so anyway, 30% operating margin is the only thing I would say about Oracle that kind of upsets me, and they're fixing this, but they're kind of a one trick pony. They've never figured out, and I think they just bought TikTok, so they're expanding but it's not, TikTok doesn't have the same mystique.
I think they got a portion of TikTok. That was kind
Yeah,
of
it
a
was weird.
weird
They just wanted to get
buy.
that data. They didn't really want the business. They
Yeah,
wanted the data on their servers. They wanted data in their computers.
probably.
Yeah. So, but Oracle, the only complaint I have about Oracle, and this is coming from a guy that has $0 invested in Oracle. The only complaint I have, I love the company. The only complaint I have is they're a one trick pony. I wish they would do another Oracle and another one and another one. But you know what? They win. They win in that what they give the customers. It's beautiful. There is businesses that are 30% operating margin businesses, and they just keep they're very rare. They're very rare, but let's consider them like multi horse or multi quarter horse winners. They've got multiple quarter horses that are winning, and they're winning in these spaces that are 30, 35, 40. I mean, there's some businesses that I'm just like, man, this is incredible. Yeah.
So let's hone in on your example of your metaphor of the Tesla to the King Ranch. I'm adding that in there. The King Ranch F-350. I mean, I saw one today, dually, two wheels on the back or four wheels total. I mean, the thing was just impressive. It was huge.
Well, you're riding out
It's
that
just,
Warner. You're riding out some storms in life. If you're driving that, if that's your business, metaphorically speaking, if that's your business, the ranch F-350 dual cab. I mean, if that's your business, and you hit a little roadblock in life, it's just a little bump, man. It's just like, all right, I don't want to hit anything, but like, all right, we're gonna be fine. Like, we're not going to the hospital tonight. But if you're driving this business that's like it's operating off these paper thin margins, and it's like it's how I think the technology works, and I think the batteries are going to work, and I think we're good, and you hit a little roadblock, you hit a little storm in life, that business is going to get crushed. It's literally going to get crushed. And I'm just using that. I'm telling my nephews, man, the safest thing you can drive out west is a big old pickup truck. And in business, the safest thing you can get into are these really high margin businesses with beautiful brands. Those are my thoughts, Warner.
yeah, because people, I've seen this in real estate. I mean, when we purchased our real estate's got, I mean, because it's real estate's unfair, to be honest with you. It's really unfair because they'll give you, LTV, loan to value, 75, 80%. So your dollars are, if you look at that, if they're giving me 75 to 80%, that's 4 or 5x in your
That's right.
return on your dollars versus a normal investment in Oracle. You can't beat it. Right. So, but the key thing in real estate that applies to any other investment is buying it at the right
Bingo.
price. Because if you overpay for it with your debt payment will eat you alive. Say your debt payment is, let's say your debt payment's $6,000 a month, right? And your rents are pulling in $7,000 a month. Ooh, man. Yeah, I mean, you're like, it's, let's say you're, I don't know, you're like a fourplex, and each rent is whatever it comes to, 7,000, but you lose one of those units.
Ouch.
I
Ouch.
mean, you're below that. Let's make the numbers easier. You're at 8,000, 40 units. You lose one unit, right? Now you're down 6,000, 6,000. You made no money. You lose two units, you're 2,000 negative on that, off that monthly mortgage payment. So it's not, it's not just because you have a 40% operating margin business or 30% operating margin business doesn't mean you're going to be successful. As we talked about before, it's all about the price. You said you could have a great quality business, but if you buy at the wrong price, it can be a horrible business. So we'll talk about that more in another podcast. And guys like Howard Marks really drive into that. I mean, he really dives into how do you evaluate a business? And it's really based on the underlying fundamentals. So you have a 40% operating margin business, you have a huge margin of safety, but that margin of safety is determined by how much you bought that business for. So there's really two things: how much did you buy it for, and what's the operating margin of the
That's
business.
right.
And that's what we're going to go into in depth as we buy our own businesses, private businesses, and look at, on this podcast, all sorts of different businesses, from laundromats. I got a guy out here I met who runs I think it's called the Grease Barrel, and he does oil changes, and he's got a gas station. I mean, those are just two cash cows, just ching, 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 just spinning off cash because he runs them the right way. So
And I want to meet this character Dallas.
yeah,
I
and
can't wait to meet this dude Dallas. I gotta pick his brain.
oh yeah, Dallas and the other guy, I forget his name. Dallas is a character, but this other guy that runs the Grease Barrel, I mean, he's got Porsches. I mean, you can tell he's got so much cash falling out of his pockets, figuratively speaking. He's got cars everywhere. I mean, I went to the back of the Grease Barrel, and he's like, yeah, all these are my cars, like 10
Oh
cars back
jeez.
there. Oh
Oh
yeah, I just
jeez.
bought this Porsche. I got it on the auction for half price. It was a great deal. I couldn't turn it down. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what Mario and I are creating for our podcast listeners. We want you to be so financially successful that you have
That's right.
opportunities, and you're not working from if you are working from 6 in the morning till 6 in the night, you're working on, let's say, six over a 12-hour period, you're working on six different businesses. 2 hours here, 2 hours there. I get it. If you want to work on six different 40% operating margin businesses, not one 5% operating margin business
That's
takes
right.
12 hours. I think that's a
That's
good way
right.
to look at it.
All right, Warner. I think we're gonna land the plane here.
Thank you for listening to the Red to Black podcast. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to our podcast. If you would like to connect with us in the future, you can find us on LinkedIn. Simply search for Werner Minchell or Mario Parzino. Also, you can find a link to our LinkedIn profiles in the profile section of the podcast. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future.